Welcome to three-step process to developing a plan for your dissertation proposal. I am Aubrey Wang, a professor of educational leadership at the St. Joseph's University. Many students that I've worked with for the past 15 years or so have shared that they don't quite know how to start planning for their proposal writing so that they can be completed. I have developed this presentation to help students gain insights and practical tools to develop a plan in just 3 steps. How to begin? Step 1 is to know the expected format before you start. Step 2 is to outline your dissertation and break it into chapters to draft and edit. And then step 3 is to map it out with concrete dates. How do you know the expectation? Well, you have to learn first about the required formatting for your dissertation proposal and also the final dissertation write-up. When we talk about formatting, we're talking about which technical style guide is being used. For many social science doctoral degrees, they will be using the APA style guide. Then you want to pay attention to which version of style guide should you be using. Typically, you'll be using the guide that you came in with as the first year student. Once you know the style guide, then you want to understand what is required in the overall dissertation. So typically, you will have a title page, you might have an abstract, then you might have some front matters, table of contents, then you go into chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, then you might have references, and then the appendices. You also need to know, for instance, in chapter 1, which is the introduction, whether there are specific subtitles that you need to include. So these would relate to things like, do you need to have an introduction? Do you need to have a section on the uniqueness of the study? Do you need to have a purpose statement? Do you need to have operational definitions? And the only way you'll find out is, again, by learning what is the preferred format. For chapter 2, typically you would include a general introduction to the literature review, and then typically most institutions would prefer the literature review to include both a conceptual framework section as well as a review of studies that have been done on your topic, and also a conclusion section where you criticize what's been done before, highlight what is known, but also what is yet unknown, and how your proposed study will be able to address those that are still unknown. Chapter 3 will typically be the methodology, and you would have a basic introduction, then very quickly you'll go into the research design, where you will talk about whether you're going to do generally a qualitative, a quantitative, or mixed methodology, and specifically which kind of those type of design you will use. For instance, if you're using quantitative study, is it going to be a experimental design or just a survey design? If it's qualitative design, is it going to be a phonological design or ethnographic design? And mixed methods, is it going to be sequential or explanatory or one of those? Then you typically will have to go into the participants and the research site selection methodology, then going into the conversation. If you have an intervention, you want to talk about that. And then you want to be able to talk about the data collection tool, both the quantitative and the qualitative, as well as the procedure that you will be following and the analysis that you will be using. Then you also need to find similar information for chapter 4, which is typically the results, and chapter 5, which is typically the discussion and conclusion, and also what need to be included as the appendices. For instance, the IRB approval, the instrumentation, and maybe other things that you have used. For graduation requirements, it is important to always know what is needed before you can graduate. So in a typical program, you will have to complete the classes, maintain a certain GPA, pass the comprehensive exam, successfully defended your proposal, passed the IRB, successfully defended your final dissertation, and finished all the required copy editing to bring the dissertation to publication level for ProQuest before you can graduate. The easiest way to learn would be to review recently completed dissertations from your institution. And now for step 2, where you want to outline your dissertation and break it into chapters to draft and edit. It helps if you can set a time frame for the proposal defense. So think about when would you possibly have a proposal defense. Then plan out when will you be taking your comprehensive exam. When will you finish your 3rd chapter? When will you finish your 2nd chapter? When will you finish your 1st chapter? When can you maybe work with a copy editor if it's required, as well as giving this proposal at least 2 weeks length for the whole dissertation committee to review. So work with a timeline, make it as realistic as you can, share it with your dissertation chair, and refine it if necessary. Then you want to outline each chapter, definitely using the guide that your institution provides for chapter 1, 2, and 3. And when you write, always remember to write first the main ideas for the chapter, which helps if you have the required headings, then for each section, then for each paragraph. Make sure you get the main ideas down so you know, for instance, that the purpose of this paragraph is to, whatever it might be. And once you do that, then fill in the citations and transition sentences. Towards the last steps would be the copy editing and the formatting. And now, the third and the last step is to map out with concrete dates. So earlier, you started to create a timeline for yourself. And now you want to attach that timeline with an actual date. Then you want to enter those dates into your personal calendar. And to make it more concrete, you want to develop a process to hold yourself accountable, even with just one partner with whom you share your dates for completion. And have that person being able to ask you, where are you in that process? However, life does intervene, so be flexible about that. Never feel guilt, just adjust as needed. I hope you found that presentation useful. And remember, writing a dissertation is a manageable task if you approach it correctly and as simply as the 3 steps that I suggested. If you want to see additional resources, here are some of the blogs that I personally found really useful, and I highly recommend that you use them. Thank you.